It is a Thursday. It's an off day for the San Diego Padres. It's a travel day for San Diego Football Club. So what a better day to get on out here to Barrio Logan. Come to Mason Ale Works. We're on the back patio. It's going to be a packed weekend here. Thankfully, they got Logan Avenue paved.
Yeah.
Because we dealt with Logan Avenue when it was unpaved. Kind of a hot mess. But this weekend, it is Chicano Park Day on Saturday. And they're expecting tens of thousands of people to come to Barrio Logan. So we're in here early. We're sitting out back, having a couple of cervezas, and we have a day to breathe a little bit and talk about the Padres and talk about SDFC, which will be doing something it's never done before, traveling 3 time zones, playing on the East Coast, playing an Eastern Conference opponent in their building. So plenty of time for us, John, to stretch out a little bit, take a breath, and just see how things are going.
I like this pattern. I like this pattern of like the Wednesday game is so close to our recording time that we just like touch on the Padres, and then when there's the off day Thursday, we get to spread our legs a little bit.
Spread our legs.
And dig.
That's what we're doing.
What did I
What
mean?
kind of podcast
wings.
is
I meant
this?
wings. Spread our wings?
I don't know, John. You tell us.
We're not
I
flying
feel like
yet,
you're
Darren.
telling us something.
You got to walk before you can run. You got to run before you can fly. We're walking.
So things are going so well that John is spreading his legs here on Section 19.
I am around the pole of this table. Also, first time I've had this Mason Ale Works LFG double dry hopped hazy that they made for baseball season. The can has like a skeleton Padre hitting a baseball. It's fantastic. It's fantastic beer. Can't say enough good things about it.
Well, as mentioned, Chicano Park Day is coming up this weekend. So we were just chatting with some of the people here at Mason Ale Works, which is on Logan Avenue. And if you want a good watering hole, and they'll have the tacos and the trompo will be out there on Logan Avenue, this will be a spot for you to visit. And John just gave you a great endorsement there on one of the cervezas that you can find.
It's very good.
But speaking of people who are traveling in, I will say, all of a sudden, I want to say it was sometime in the middle of 2024, I started noticing a social media account that caught my eye. It was named and is named Letters to AJ. And I obviously am not the only person who has noticed this. And so, of course, you click. We've talked a little bit about how many Padres podcasts there are currently out there. It feels like there's another one every day.
Every day.
But all of a sudden, there was like great insight, great analytical analysis of things that were happening. And joining us here, speaking of traveling, because he lives in Hawaii, although splitting time between San Diego and Hawaii, there are probably worse ways to live in the world. The creator of Letters to AJ, Dylan, is with us here on the back patio. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm just going to be very direct because I know we've been sitting here and getting to know you a little bit. Who are you? Like how did this happen? I feel like one day you were not in our lives as Padre fans, and then the next day, man, there was just a lot of stuff, a lot of Letters to AJ content out there.
Just a Padres fan. I grew up in San Diego. I never left my affiliation for the team and the team that we grew up with, which is, growing up in the 90s and 2000s, quite a lot different than what we've seen recently. And it wasn't the same environment, the same team that we were so used to. And along the way, I think a lot of people discover this. When you start writing about something, you start to understand it better yourself. So, yeah, the letters really started out kind of meditative, just getting these thoughts out there. And a lot of people enjoyed it. And it's so easy to get reach and discovery with internet tools that stuck with it. So on our 4th season now.
So you started doing this, like I said, so I'm late to the party then, obviously. If I've just started, and I don't know that I'm right about that, if this just popped on my radar in 2024 and this is now a 4th season, I feel like I'm kind of late to the party, so I apologize. But this is something that you started for yourself, and now all of a sudden you're like, wow, people dig it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kind of like this podcast.
Yeah, I became aware of it slightly differently. It was when Bandwagon Beach was actually, I think I was between jobs, and so I was writing Bandwagon Beach on Substack like almost every single day. And at some point I think I got an email from Substack that was like, this other Substack has endorsed your Substack or recommended your Substack. And I was like, what is this Letters to AJ thing? And I went and I clicked on it and I started reading it, and like Darren, you and I have talked about how I can't stand how much of sports talk comes down to like transactions and like we should sign this guy, we should trade for this guy. Why isn't this guy getting called up? And I was reading it and I was like, there's none of that. It's just an analysis of the baseball, and I like this, and I'm learning from it, and it's great. I actually wanted more of it. And I remember after I read through a handful of the articles and I thought it was great, I went to Craig Elston, who I was hosting Padres Hot Tub with at the time, and I was like, do you know about this Substack? And I think it had been going for 6 months at that point or something. And Craig's like, yeah, where you been? Like, everyone knows this thing is great. I was like, damn it. So I was a little late to the party, but I think I beat you there.
Yeah, well, clearly you did. Again, and I feel a little silly not having recognized that. But I'm glad I did, because like I said, and then all of a sudden I think what happens is, at least in my experience, is once you click on it, you're like, oh, this is really interesting, to the point where Dylan, and I hope you take this as a compliment, where my first thought was, I feel like this is somebody who's worked in baseball. I feel like this is somebody, like, is Dylan even this person's real name? I feel like this is sort of, a bit of analysis here that is so intellectually stimulating that I felt like it came from somebody who had a career in baseball, which I think is a compliment. I hope it's taken that way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, never with Major League Baseball. I did play baseball for a lot longer, I think, than most people. Played, even after college and adult leagues, and was just around the game my entire life. But I think, John, kind of what you said, the way the newsletter evolved is exactly as you mentioned. We don't really do a lot of journalism. It's just analysis. It's just trying to put, years and years of experience playing into what we're seeing, and our lens is the same as every other fan. But my experience is really just playing a lot of baseball and running, not really serious teams, but getting some insight from trying to run, our pretty low-level, mediocre college team. The similarities between that and the major leagues are very few, but not nothing. You learn a lot about how people behave and what it takes to get cultural buy-in and lock-in, even at those most amateur levels. So that informs what we write about to some degree.
How'd you come up with the name Letters to AJ?
It was literally just perseverating on, I think it was...
Wait, what was that word?
Yeah, really, man.
Perseverating. Thinking the same thought and finding that your mind keeps coming back to the same thought. Something originally about, I guess, the Juan Soto trade, that it was different than other trades in that typically you trade for a superstar, you have a rapidly depreciating asset. You're trading future value for present value. But with Juan Soto, the wrinkle was he has 2.5 years left, and he was, I think, 24 at the time. And so that's a different trade than your normal superstar trade. And what it allows you to do is preserve a lot of the future value that you're sending and collect information about the plight of your team over the course of a year or two, and then potentially pivot to meet your present day needs with a lot of the retained value in this asset that wasn't a typical superstar trade. And just kind of wondering if that was something that had been mentioned in, Padres discussions. I'm sure that it was, but also to explore if that's a coherent thought. Just wrote basically like a letter about it, which turned out to be like 3,000 words. And it was very fun, and I felt like I understood, my own thoughts a lot better after that. And that was just the process from there, and that's where the name came from. It's just a letter to AJ.
So this is summer of 2022.
Yeah.
That was the birthplace of Letters to AJ.
Yeah.
Have you ever actually written a letter to AJ?
No.
He's it's not uncommon for him to be aware of some of the things that are written and said, and not uncommon for him sometimes to reach out to people on different levels, not just legacy media types.
Yeah, interesting. No, never have thought to.
That was going to be my question of, did AJ ever write a letter back?
Not that I know of, unless he's pseudonymous as well.
Letters to AJ. I feel like we can make that happen, because there's a lot of people out there that are always searching for some sort of unique insight, or maybe something even that the best front offices in sports sometimes overlook, right? Like a whole Pelican Brief type setup where all of a sudden, whoa, wait, wow, what is this? That's this guy's onto something here,
Well, what I think is interesting is I think 2023 is the year that really started writing regularly and just trying to figure out what was going on in 2023, because the Padres were kind of a unanimous preseason pick as World Series contenders, and that seemed super rational.
Yeah, what was going on in 2023? I haven't figured that out.
So it's something that probably can't ever be proven, but one of the things that we touched on was it did seem like the team had a really, really, really rigid approach. That was, we called it the 3 true outcomes approach, which is that's a well-validated way to maximize run scoring over the long term. Indeed, the 2023 Padres outscored their opponents by 101 runs across the season.
Yeah.
But the record
the dreaded run differential conversation, which I am supportive of, by the way.
Yeah, well, the record was so abysmal, and the easy way to reconcile that is it's just bad luck. The scoring just didn't happen when it should have. This is the right strategy. But that just didn't feel like all there was to it when we were watching the games. And what we wrote about and we're still writing about and still trying to figure out is that true? Are players really just a random collection of outcomes? They're going to be this many hits, this many home runs, and when those occur is completely random? Or is there some non-randomness to it, and does it make sense to think about the game as having an in-game strategy where you're not trying to maximize runs over the long term? You're trying to get as many runs as you need to win in this 9-inning increment. And does that mean sometimes you should actually be focusing in on not striking out? Aiming a ground ball towards a vacated second base on a hit and run. Are there situations where that actually does get at the more important statistic, which is win probability? And who knows if this has anything to do with what we've seen the last couple years, but it does feel like there was a organizational philosophy change after that 2023 season that seemed to align more with trying to win games rather than trying to just maximize runs over the long term. And again, can't prove this. No idea if this is true. No idea if this is just a coincidence or if this is how it's being thought about in the clubhouse. But it's been pretty rich material to write and analyze about.
Wait, I have a question. So, not to go too deep into my own thing, but I went to I'm an atheist who went to a Catholic high school and was forced to take a lot of religion classes, and so in my head there's a lot of battle between like the places where religion provides an answer that science doesn't, right? So like the Big Bang, yeah, sure, I believe the Big Bang happened, but a religious person would say, but God put all those elements together to make that happen. You kind of pointed at the 2023 Padres and went like, maybe it's just bad luck. I have a theory, just a theory, that luck is not, I'm not going to think of the word, that luck can be influenced by vibes. And my argument against this as a shitty golfer is that I've been told a million times, if you imagine you're going to hit the shot that one way and you literally picture it in your mind, you're much more likely to hit that shot. And I'm like, that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it, like someone who is on a team where the vibes are great might be planning for something good to happen and therefore more ready for it to happen. They're kind of creating their own luck. Whereas someone who's planning for the worst outcome to happen and a good opportunity arises, they're a split second behind taking advantage of it, right? Like, am I crazy or is luck like a thing that can be altered slightly by vibes?
Well, you're getting at the physiology underlying performance, and yeah, there's no doubt that being in the correct headspace does influence athletic performance, especially in a sport like baseball where it's all reaction-based. You can't be too cognizant of what you're trying to do at the plate, because by the time you make a conscious decision and think through every step of your swing, the ball's been in the catcher's mitt for a few seconds.
Well, this is like Jose Iglesias the other day hit like a 2-foot for a single, right? Because he hit the ball and he took off because he's like, I can make this. And I'm like, I think on the 2023 team, someone would hit that and be like, oh, that's going to go foul.
Well, the example, I think, and you tell me if you would agree, Dylan, because, it's easy for me to sort of, just like burp this up, is I don't remember exactly what the extra innings record was or what the one-run record was in 2023. But it's real easy to say, well, that is just, they were both bad, and it's easy to say, well, that's just luck.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if we're going to believe that vibes will play some sort of factor, whether it's 100% of the factor, 50%, whatever what do you choose to believe, the fact that that those records in particular were poor is probably, you can say it's luck, but there are other factors at play where guys in those situations, maybe we're not in the right headspace to perform in certain scenarios, right? Like I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about here.
I think so. I can tell you the way that I try to think about it and write about it is what we're talking about is organizational culture. And that's something that you can take lessons from other industries.
We talk about that all the time.
Organizational culture sets a basic standard of assumptions. This is okay. This is what we do here. It gives permissions to behave a certain way, and it also puts up guardrails against certain behaviors that are not consistent with that culture. And so inevitably in baseball, there's always incentive misalignment. And I think there's this nice little clip from Vinny Pasquantino circulating, I think, a week or two ago.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
Where he was so frustrated by the way that modern analytics treat sacrifice flies. Because in his mind, he's up there to drive in runs. And when he successfully makes contact, doesn't strike out, gets a sac fly, drives the run in, the metrics are very uncharitable towards him. And often I think he cited weighted runs created plus, he gets scored negatively for that at bat.
Yeah, it gets the RBI, but that's kind of an old school stat at this point.
Yeah, but to bring it back to culture, I think...
But not completely dismissed in front offices. I mean, I can tell you that from firsthand experience that the RBI stat, for as much as it gets shit on out there, it is not completely dismissed by front offices.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. But
because
I think,
it measures a situation.
It does.
Yeah.
But from the player's perspective, you inevitably you organize around what you measure and what gets you paid, and you do get paid for weighted runs created plus, WOBA, WAR, and if your culture permits the individual aspect of the game to supersede what the moment calls for, you will definitely have players who will take bad at-bats where a sac fly would get it done, but they're playing for their next contract. They're selling out for power. They don't care if they strike out. That, at the end of the season, isn't going to change their fortunes much, but regularly optimizing around, small ball, that might actually take a few points off your WAR, and that can have meaningful, effects on your long-term earnings.
Yeah, and like this is an analysis, I think, John, that you and I talked about recently. To me, like the story's real simple. It's not as, it's not as like, hey, bad manager. It's guys in that clubhouse, there were the haves, like they did get paid, and there were the dudes that were going to get paid. And the interesting thing is that the dudes who were going to get paid, the closer, the Cy Young Award winner, and Juan Soto, were probably your best performers, but it didn't fit into the culture of team baseball, right? There were times where, and I know it sounds ridiculous, and people think I have some sort of vendetta against Blake Snell. I don't. I think he's a two-time Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah.
Like it speaks for itself.
Not many people are.
But, there were times where maybe giving an extra inning where he was a little tired and up on the ropes, maybe giving an extra inning could have saved Steven Wilson from an extra inning, right?
Or pitching a contact instead of going for the strikeout.
And especially, right, that's where he's just like, I mean, he was pretty well known around the clubhouse for saying, like, hey, like, I got 5 innings in me, and this is the Rays. Like, this was the Rays influence. I got 5 innings, so I'm just going to try to punch out 10 and call it a day.
Yeah.
But, in a season where you didn't have Robert Suarez, maybe you could have saved your bullpen a couple of innings, but that's not really, that was part of who he was, but the other part was having an agent in your ear like Scott Boras who's telling you, hey, if you're going out there and giving him 6, like, call it a day, my guy. Like, we need to get you paid in the offseason. And it just was like a bizarre, you can't fault the guys who were performing, but you also know, like they were thinking of the things that you were talking about, which is my next contract.
Well, what really, and I'll say a little bit about how I think about this. I'm a pretty charitable person, and I think it's easy to kind of get on the players for behaving this way, but I really don't hold any ill will towards any of the players that were looking out for what they thought were their best interests. And I'll put someone, front and center on that. That includes Josh Hader. It came out, he was very honest after the season that he did have special rules. He would not pitch 3 games in a row. He was not pitching more than a 3-out save. And there's no doubt that influenced the fortunes of that season where...
Oh, even in September, yeah.
They missed the playoffs by 1 game, and that's kind of a big deal. But I want to be charitable to him because I do think that that's something that can only happen if you have a culture that permits it. And ultimately, that comes back to the organization. And this is true in any industry. You'll see that culture will eat strategy for breakfast across industries. And it's why we wrote about that a lot the last year, because it seemed like this organization took responsibility and started to make changes. And I found in 2025, the post-game interviews and especially the interviews with Mike Schilt are so interesting because you have players now saying things like Iglesias after the game the other day said, he executed at bat playing Padres baseball, which is winning every pitch. Winning every pitch, winning. Not, selling out to maximize your individual stats. Winning the pitch. What does the play call for? And that just feels like an organizational shift, and there's been a lot of continuity in the upper tiers of the front office. So I give them a lot of credit. I think I put some of the blame for what looked like a pretty bad culture in 2023 on this organization, but I give them credit for taking responsibility, and it really looks like changing things in a pretty short period of time.
And
without completely blowing the whole thing up and starting from scratch.
Yeah, it's the same players to a large degree.
So I actually, this brings me to a point, something that I thought of yesterday when I was watching the win over the Cubs. Playing the Cubs yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tatis comes up, bases loaded in the 6th inning or whatever. And I'm seeing my Blue Sky timeline go like, this is an MVP moment for Tatis. He wants that grand slam, like slam Diego, right? And he gets up and he gets a couple real bad calls that are borderline. Actually, I think the little tracker on the TV had them as balls. They're called strikes. He's shaking his head. I'm like, man, he's gonna get out of his head, right? He works the count to 2-2, and then there's like 3 pitches in a row that are right there on the edge. He can't rely on them being called balls, so he's fouling them off. And I'm like, he has swung now at like 3 pitches in a row. This guy can throw the ball anywhere, and he's going to swing again because now he's like, I got this guy timed, right? If he comes in the zone, he's mine. He works a walk, and he walks down to first, and here comes a run. And I was like, he didn't have that in him 2 years ago. He did not have that in him 2 years ago to go, the right thing for my team here is to take the balls and take the walk. 2 years ago, he was like, I'm crushing this ball. I'm winning this game. And that is, I mean, I kind of chalked it up to maturity, but part of maturity is, what surrounds you, right? And if the culture surrounding them is you do what's best for the team, especially a guy on a 14-year contract or whatever, right? Like, he's not hitting free agency anytime soon. You do what's best for the team. And sometimes that means you hit the fastball over the wall, and sometimes it means you take the ball and you take the walk and you let the next guy have a shot at it. I loved that moment. That moment personified a lot of what you're talking about.
That was one of the best at-bats of his career.
It was so good.
It was incredibly impressive. And there's a phrase that I like to use. It describes this. What you were seeing, that was mental toughness. That was definitely maturity, but it was also physical skill. It was some emergent property of the combination of those things that let him be successful in a unique way that a lesser hitter would not have been successful in. And as you said, I do believe earlier in his career, he's not successful in that at bat. The phrase I use to describe that is, it's what you're seeing. It's hard to quantify, but it's even harder to miss. It's there. There's something different about him as a hitter, and there's something different about the philosophy of the team and the culture of the team.
How much of what interests you as somebody who follows this as closely as you do and somebody who now is putting those thoughts together for public consumption, how much of the sport are things that are quantifiable that you just mentioned versus the things that we cannot quantify? Like, I think that's, I just got done at SDFC training, and I was talking to their head coach about the team they're playing this weekend, Charlotte FC, and I said, well, what makes them good? And he's an analytical guy, and he goes, you know what else they do? They just figure out a way to win. And he's like, and that's something that doesn't get enough credit because we're always searching for some sort of quantifiable metric. And I wonder, for you, from where you started to where you are, clearly, I think anybody who's listened to this or read your work understands that you come from an educated background and you're looking and viewing the game differently. But how much interests you about sport, baseball or otherwise, the quantifiable and the stuff that you can't quantify?
I think they're indispensable. I think the way I contextualize it is, even when we're talking about things that are very quantifiable, and we do have tremendous metrics to quantify performance, and I think, WAR is probably the greatest single statistic ever created.
Which one?
So,
Help me out here.
I'm going to parrot a line from Tom Tango, the creator of WAR, who he loves to say, it's kind of a Mott and Bailey, he loves to say the framework of WAR is perfect. It's always been perfect. And then when you challenge him about what that means, he means, well, I mean, there's different implementations and they're not all perfect, but the framework is perfect.
Yeah, those aren't my fault.
So I just think the framework, the idea that you look at these, long-term quantifiable performance indicators and you capture much of the value of the player is just tremendous. And when you think about sports teams as businesses, they need to make purchasing decisions that are in the millions of dollars, and the way that works across any industry is that type of investment has to be quantifiable, and inevitably your economy is going to organize around quantifiable statistics. But that is not the end-all be-all. And even when you're talking about quantifiable statistics, you're still talking about ultimately probability. And there is a framework for making decisions under uncertainty. It's called Bayesian inference, and it starts with prior probabilities based on statistical analysis, and then you layer on the present context on top of that. And that's typically how you get to the best decisions in a situation where you have to make decisions with imperfect information and you don't have the luxury of inaction. And it's been shown to be very effective in fields like, internal medicine, diagnostic medicine, finance, forecasting. And there is an analogy to winning a baseball game where every single pitch, your probabilities and your win conditions are changing, and focusing in on that and recognizing the moments where what the game's calling for is something that is going to hurt your WAR, but is going to increase your chance to win the game.
Wait,
Bayesian? I'm sorry. I just need to...
Go ahead.
Bayesian influence?
I got a different...
Just so I can...
Bayesian inference, yeah.
Inference, okay. I will look that up later. So is it fair for me then to ask you, as somebody who is so knowledgeable about all the stuff, right? Like, there always is the hypothetical. Who do you want up at the plate with the game on the line? Is it the person who you have quantifiable evidence will produce in a situation like that? Or is it somebody who you will look at, who you will think mentally, this is the person that I feel like, even given all the variables, situationally, game on the line, where you might be, are you home, are you away? Are you just simply like, no, this is easy because I can give you the data that suggests that this is the person that I want there? Or are you still wrapped up in, I just trust this person because I know how they're wired?
Yep. Well, that's the magic touch that a manager gets to bring to these games, because there is no way to know what the right decision is beforehand. You just got to infer with the best understanding available to you.
And who is it? Like, who would you say right now? And I know small sample size, but just based on what knowledge we do have, not necessarily limited to 2025, but is there somebody, that you would say on the line, this, if I could pick anybody on the squad right now to be in that situation, this is the person I want with the bat in their hands?
I think what's so great about this team is you have more than one option for that question. And it's always going to be context dependent. If you want someone that you just know will not strike out, will put the ball in play, you have that guy. You have Luis Arraez. If you want someone who is ice water in his veins, not going to be intimidated by the moment, you got Jackson Merrill. And if you want the most dynamic hitter in baseball, who can hit it 450 feet, or he can choke up and punch a line drive through the right side, you got Fernando Tatis Jr.
Oh, man, he's going to be pissed.
This is the essence of this, right? Because what we've seen this year is...
But I got something for Manny.
We have seen opposing managers walk Fernando Tatis Jr. to get to two-time batting champ Luis Arraez.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy AJ Hinch got shit on a little bit last year because he made a decision. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he made a decision, I think, to get to Arraez or to get to Tatis. I don't remember what it was, but it was an easy thing for people to be like, what does he know? But you know, he understood situationally, like, you know, there's no great option here. So, you know, I'm thinking maybe lefty, roll one over, contact, whatever. I think he walked Arraez to get to Tatis. I think that was the circumstance. But that's the essence of managing. Like you're presented with, you know, with situations that sometimes are not always ideal, and you know, you have only so much information, but you also have to make a decision in the moment, in real time. You don't have all day to sit around and think about this.
Yeah. And just to bring it back to Manny, because I do have something for him.
Okay.
I don't know if you'll remember this. You remember when the Nationals came to Petco last year? There was that dramatic walk-off, that Profar hit.
Yeah.
He was celebrating with the fans, adjacent to the visitors' dugout, and they took offense.
Yeah.
And you had all the makings of, a big team brawl if there was retaliation. Sure enough, Mackenzie Gore hits Profar, you know, right after he got into it with their catcher. Like, clearly intentional. Mm-hmm. Clearly the kind of thing that you need to respond to. I think we wrote about it at the time. Manny Machado came up next. And you talk about someone recognizing the moment. He hit one of the most massive moonshot home runs I have ever seen.
And stared at it.
And the beautiful thing is StatCast lets you see that he took a ridiculously hard swing, 85 mile per hour bat speed. If you want someone that has just a flair for the drama and can lead by example.
That's why I was surprised you didn't pick him
right?
as one of the people, because I feel like the bigger the moment, the bigger Manny usually shows up.
He has a flair for that. He recognizes when there's a chance to just change the vibes, you know, on a dime. You got Manny Machado. So,
and Manny arrived at the park that day in that mindset. You know, somebody who was there, and I was still on radio at the time. You know, Profar arrived at the park that day, and you know, it's the middle of the summer, right? So this is a thing on Baseball Network, and all the talk shows locally were talking about, oh, will there be retaliation? The Nationals didn't like the way Profar celebrated, and Profar got to the park the next day, and you know him, he just
nice guy.
And didn't really think there would be any carryover because he didn't truly think he did anything wrong.
I'm sorry, guys. I was just celebrating.
And they were joking around a little bit about, oh man, you're going to be in trouble. They're going to be throwing at you tonight before the game, and you know, before the clubhouse is open. And he's like, nah, that's not going to happen. And Manny walked in, and this is what I was told. I wasn't there, obviously, so I'm relying on it. Manny goes, oh, I hope so. He goes, I hope this happens because I am ready. And he's like, and brother, let me tell you something. I'm going to be in the on deck circle, so I'm just letting you know whatever happens. And that to me is what you're talking about. For that type of moment, he is the perfect character for that situation.
I think that's what brings this whole conversation home is context dictates, you know, who's best for what situation. And that's something that you kind of lose when you try to turn everyone into a composite outcome, relying on averages, because that's not real life. Real life is extremely context dependent. And there are such interesting personalities and such transcendent skill on the team right now. We've never seen anything like this in our whole lives.
Yeah, so I actually want to back up a little bit to the Bayesian influence and all of that, because what you were describing is, you know, kind of what we always thought what we think the Dodgers are, what we thought the Rays were, like just a bunch of math nerds sitting around going like, hey, I know the exact right guy for this, right? And with the Padres last year and this year, and it's bled into the broadcast now with Mud and Don, where they're just like, we're a high contact team. There's a lot of action. We have guys that can put the bat on the ball. Like I think it was maybe even you or AC or something who was pointing out like they're one of the highest teams in the league in terms of like when they swing they make contact, and one of the lowest teams in the league in terms of like walking. And they're just like, yeah, like they wait for the pitch to be in the zone and they swing at it. And this, I'm going to call it offensive staff of 5 or 6 hitting coaches that were out there with Merrill and Machado the other day. These guys don't look like math nerds. They kind of look like meatheads. And I wonder if they're kind of just stumbling into the right thing by going like, hey, everyone was so focused on the money ball of it all that they forgot that hitting the ball is the most important thing. So are they like kind of getting to the same answer, but not for the math nerdy reasons, just getting to the same answer because they're kind of looking at like what used to work and going like, look, we can't beat the Dodgers on Moneyball, but we can beat the Dodgers on contact.
So, yeah, it's hard to know, but I think something that you just brought up is pretty important, which is when you're talking about quantifiable statistics, the thing about that is things that can be measured in that way, things that are quantifiable, that information can become commoditized. And something that maybe hasn't been, talked about much is, Moneyball was revolutionary. This, team, the A's that had, no payroll, they did figure out some ways to become, more efficient.
So you sent me that video clip last week of the guy on Hosmer's podcast talking about his value going down while he's doing the sack. And you afterwards you said, and I'm sorry if I'm ruining the punchline for you, but I have a follow-up. Afterwards, you said, I think 2025 is like the last year where like people are going to be making serious decisions on like these advanced metrics. And I told that to Darren, and Darren said, well, what does he think is coming next? And that's my question to you. If they're not making decisions on the advanced metrics, are they going back to the traditional ones and going like, well, now batting average matters again?
No. So what I think is that there's just a secular trend across sports that they're realizing that the importance of these advanced metrics is to use them as the tools that they were designed to be.
Yeah.
WAR is, I'm going to bring it up again because I think I give the impression that I'm anti-war or something, but it is a phenomenally insightful stat. It's the greatest, singular stat ever created, I think, across sports. It's brilliant.
You still haven't picked which war, but that's okay.
I'm being charitable. I'll make a blanket statement. I'll go with Tom Tang. The framework is great.
Yeah.
It's perfect for what it's designed for. It's designed to very quickly pare down a list of 800 players who played last year and see which ones really produce value beyond just the super salient traditional statistics.
Yeah. And
it's fantastic at that. It was never meant to be your golden compass about how to win every moment in every game. And that's provable.
I think Luis Ariz currently has a negative WAR.
He does.
At Baseball Reference.
But you're right that people kind of looked at WAR and to the point of Luis Ariz, they look at Luis and they go, well, that can't be a valuable player. His WAR is negative, and it has become like the Madden or the show like player rating, right? Like people view it as your player rating.
Except it's real money because it's used in arbitration cases and free agency and trade value.
Yeah. But like using it as a player rating system, I think is where it's wrong.
And I think that's the awareness that's going to be, sweeping through sports. This is the next wave where, these are validated, incredible ways to capture much of the value. But that is not the same as giving you the roadmap about how to win every moment in every game. And you see it in basketball, threes and layups, those are great. Those are efficient. But they're efficient over a large sample size. Sometimes in the last possession of the game, you are not playing a large sample size game. You got to hit a tough two. That's the task before you.
This is why NBA playoffs are different than the regular season.
They are absolutely different. And there's no doubt that there's an awareness coming from, in part, the futility of some of the teams that leaned 100% into just the maximally efficient approach every context of every game, and didn't perform well in some instances when it mattered most.
I mean, the Oakland A's didn't win shit.
So
well, they won a lot of regular season games, which is what the system was designed to do.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's sort of the three-pointer in the NBA, which is designed to get you into a position where you then might be able to succeed in the postseason. But I don't think they failed because the system wasn't good enough. They also caught a couple of bad breaks.
They did.
Like
Definitely.
Derek Jeter, like a ball going for a ground rule double. Like, there were some circumstances there that prevented the A's from winning. It just wasn't because they were paper tigers during the regular season.
Nothing is monocausal, and luck is always present as a confounder, which makes it so hard to definitively answer these questions. But I think you get the best performance out of these metrics when you use them for what they were intended to provide, and not as a surrogate for just intelligent decision making in the moment.
They're factors, right? They're to be considered, but perhaps not to be the only thing of consideration. Defensively, do you find there to be? You've told us a little bit your opinions on wins above replacement. I feel like I don't know that there's been a defensive metric yet that has risen to the level across the board where people will universally, or consensus will suggest that this is the right way of looking at it. And I mean, I know people who are in you know, the quants in other systems are like, yeah, we don't even really care about defense, but you know, they will when it costs them a game or a playoff series. But where are we at just in terms of trying to analyze defense?
So outs above average is incredible. It is incredible at capturing the range value of different defenders. That's a limited scope of what makes up
range is only one part of defense.
It is one part. It is very important, but it is one part. And outs above average actually really is not charitable towards Manny Machado. But do you remember the play that actually got the Padres into the playoffs last year?
Triple play.
You know what the key to that play was?
Manny's quick decision making?
It was the quick decision making and the audacity to try to make that play. That was audacious.
Yeah.
That's Manny Machado. Just his internal clock is a Swiss watch. He's got baseball IQ that supersedes whatever his
He
his
might be the
limitations on
smartest
defense
baseball
are.
player I've
I think he
ever
is.
been around in my life.
Wow.
And you just don't see this in the box score, but you see it in the games. It's another one of these things that's hard to quantify, but it is even harder to miss. And so I don't think that there is, an all-encompassing defensive statistic. And that's good for teams like the Padres because, again, things that are quantifiable, that becomes commoditized. And then
everyone has that.
the advantage accrues to whoever has the most resources. And we know who that is. We don't have to say who that is. We know exactly who that is. So after a while, it doesn't give you a competitive advantage. You have to differentiate somewhere.
Well, this was the end of Moneyball, right? When they were like, "Hey, everyone has these stats now, and we're just getting outbid for the players that we know are valuable within our system." Yes,
that's the coda of Moneyball. Is the insights were real. They were profound. It changed the sport, and within a couple of years,
all that mattered was money.
All that mattered was money again.
Yeah.
You are I can already tell through whatever it's been here, 40 minutes of this conversation and the 20 or 30 minutes beforehand, got a little sense of what you're all about. So I won't ask you to tell us who does not stimulate you, but who stimulates you? Who's covering? Who do you? How can I say this? Who covers the Padres? That is intellectually stimulating to you.
Oh. I mean, I actually think there's a wealth of great Padres content. I love the content that you're creating.
Thank you.
Really like. I'm so impressed with how diligent Kevin Acey is. He writes everything that happens about this team every day.
He does.
He is such a workhorse. It is a delight to hear Ben and Wood's riff on the Padres. I think that show starts at like 3 a.m. my time, but when I get a chance to listen to
podcasts.
it's a delight. The Padres hot tub guys are incredible. The work they do is incredible.
I've never shouted this out on Section 1904, but I should. The Pods Above Replacement podcast is so good. It's so good. It's if there is a spiritual connection from Letters to AJ to any other podcast, it's probably that one that just digs deep into the stats and tries to find reason in them.
Yeah, and Dr. Prakoda probably knows a thing or two about Bayesian inference.
He probably knows plenty about Bayesian influence, yeah.
And then Dennis Lin, I think, is a great writer. There was the Union Tribune, I think, writer that had passed away. Was that
Bryce Miller?
Bryce Miller.
Yeah.
I sent him an email last year. I didn't read a lot of his articles, but he wrote one that was just so thoughtful. So I just think there's so much good content out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a bunch of podcasts. I mean, there's a reason why there's a market where you can have this many existing podcasts that are specific to a baseball team, and it still seemingly provides a lot of different unique angles to coverage of the club, which, I think I appreciate as well. And that's, again, one of the things I think that turned me on to your approach here is I didn't know that I felt like I was getting that anyplace else. And so there's a curiosity to what it is that you do. Do you want to work someday? Do you aspire to work for a baseball team, or is this just a passion project?
This is really just something that is very enjoyable, and I have the time to do it. And I have a other career that's very satisfying with lots of good long-term goals. But I really just enjoy this, and I enjoy meeting the people that also, are sharing this interesting moment we've been living through for several years now with this Padres team that looks nothing like the team that we grew up with.
And is this approach for you? Is this something, right? Paul DePodesta, many years in baseball, speaking of Moneyball, spent some time here.
I was about to mention Paul.
Off with Cleveland. Billy Beane has been known to be sticking some toes in the world of football, soccer meaning. For you, is this an approach that you now find yourself applying only to baseball, or do you find yourself thinking along these lines? This style of thinking when you're watching any sport across the board, assuming that you do.
Oh, I love sports. I've gone through the whole life cycle. Baseball's always been the favorite, but when the Chargers were here, football was a close second.
I can tell basketball's a part of this.
Oh, basketball. I had that was neck and neck with baseball for years, and there was even a stretch, part of the doldrums of the Padres, where soccer, especially Champions League, was right there. So I love sports. I definitely take the same approach to all of it. I would love to start writing about San Diego FC if I can make the time for it. I did one sort of waded into that arena slightly after I saw a play that annoyed me a little bit. But
Which
yeah,
one?
It was the game
Playing out of
against
the
the
back?
Galaxy. It was just going for broke to score when you really just needed to kill the clock to guarantee
know.
the win.
Yeah. Tomas Angel took a
Yeah.
shot.
But you know what? That's what he's in there to do.
Yeah.
So
Tommy Angel. Every time I think of him now, it's going to be Tommy Angel, and he's got a leather jacket, and he's smoking a cigarette. He's taking all the risks.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation and it's an interesting time for you to bring, because I literally just left there where I had this conversation with the head coach about, I just want to make sure we have it right on the radio broadcast. If you make a mistake trying to play out of the back, that's better for you today than it is just booting the ball 40 yards down the field. He's like, we are instituting a style, and if I bailed on that style today, I would lose this for the rest of the year. It's like, okay, I just want to make sure we're saying this the right way. So, I do think, 8 matches in, which is an important thing to remember. That's kind of just how they're wiring themselves, and I use that as a present tense, not wired. They are wiring themselves that way, which is why they're going to insist on doing it the way they're doing it. And if they make mistakes, then they're going to live with them, just so that they can then create a style and an approach and an identity that everybody is going to be comfortable with. I think it's really an interesting thing because, I think a lot of us are like, why doesn't Tomas Angel just run into the corner and run the clock out, know the situation? Why don't these center halves just boot the ball down the pitch? It's not how we're going to do it. And he's like, you got to remember, we're 8 matches into this. I'm like, cool. I kind of walked out of there today going, yeah, I love that. I thought that was really cool.
And I want Dylan to respond to that, but I want to point out the playing out of the back thing. 8 matches in, probably like 10 minor heart attacks in for me, because the playing out of the back is like one person makes one pass that's a little too slow or a little off kilter, and all of a sudden there's a goal opportunity for the other team, right?
Yeah.
But what it does every time I see it is I'm like, they really trust Dos Santos. And they should. He's great. But the whole strategy, you can tell, is built around, we trust our keeper.
Mm-hmm. And Mikey said to me today, he's like, yeah, he goes, it's easy to focus on the 2 mistakes we made at Colorado, but what about the 6 times we got it out of the back? He goes, now, if we create a scoring chance there, all of a sudden it's like, wow, what tremendous build-up that was, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's part of what you deal with. That's why it's not easy to be a coach. It's why it's not easy to be a general manager.
And hey, as a writer, I love having my opinion changed. So,
I'm glad you said that, because
me too.
having worked in radio forever, I do feel like there are times, and I'm probably guilty of this as well, where you want your opinion to hold up no matter what. And I am in a headspace where I am happy to be wrong about things, especially when it comes to the local teams being good. I am happy to be wrong about a lot of things. Otherwise, what is the point of watching any of this?
yeah, failure is a great teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
It's a great point.
How do you feel about the Padre catching situation?
That's a clear decision that they've made. They're sacrificing some offense for pretty good defense. And I noticed that even when it comes to like Michael King, who called a lot of his own games last year, they've really turned over a lot of the game calling to their catchers.
There's very little pitchers calling their own pitch.
Very, very little. And that's interesting. And reputationally, Martin Maldonado's, he's in the league because he is so prepared. He's famous for spending 4 hours pre-gaming. Not in the colloquial sense, but planning for how to be successful that night. And that's another one of those things, you cannot measure that, but there's real value being created. And that certainly seems like there's a comfort level with the pitchers who, that's got to be, second to like keeper in soccer, being a Major League Baseball pitcher, that's got to be one of the most stressful jobs in sports.
It does. And the fact that you nailed it with a decision has been made. And we talked a lot about like culture, right, and strategy. And the fact that a decision has been made is why I feel very confident in saying that I don't think Luis Campusano is ever playing for the San Diego Padres again. Like, I think they will trade him, but I think they are like, we are making a decision that the catcher's job is to make life easy for the pitchers, and the offense is totally secondary, and that's backwards from Luis Campusano. And so I feel like I just don't feel like he's long for this organization. But while we're on the topic of pitching, I told you before we pressed record that you are the reason why I don't really trust Randy Vasquez. Because you dig into his StatCast and you just go like, I don't think this guy has the stuff to strike out major league pitchers, but yet he's been amazing. I'm going to posit this question to you this way. This might be the most generous way I could ask this. Say 2 weeks from now, nothing has changed. Randy Vasquez is every starting pitcher that is pitching exactly the same way in about 2 weeks. But Yu Darvish is ready to come back. Whose spot does he take?
Well, I imagine they just go to a 6-man rotation. But,
Probably.
But to stick with the hypothetical.
Yes, please.
I mean, it's going to be Vasquez or Hart.
It has to be, but they obviously value having a lefty in the rotation, right?
That's a good point. It's really hard to know. I do feel that it's okay to invoke like luck as a probable explainer for Vasquez's success. Yeah. But if, to follow your hypothetical,
I mean, he doesn't strike anybody out.
Can I just follow up though? Why do you think they would value a lefty in the rotation?
Because,
why do you think that would matter more than a righty who would be adequate? It's not like you can guarantee that your lefty's going to line up with a left-hand dominant lineup.
Because the first time they went through the rotation, they didn't just place Hart fifth. I think they had him like third. And that to me was a very obvious, we want to throw a different look at you every few days. And I was like, I think Schilt values the like, you're not getting a righty every day thing.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think
I might be wrong.
There's definitely a school of thought that you want to throw that different look out there, and that wouldn't surprise me if that's how that decision was made. But if the performances were exactly the same, 4 more starts from now, Randy Vasquez is leading the major leagues in ERA. I think we would just have to take a look at our, prior assumptions and just think, is there something about baseball that we've missed to this point? And it's such a complicated game. We're never going to understand every little aspect of it, every way in which value is created. So it makes sense to keep an open mind about these things. That said, I would probably not be betting on him performing the same way in his next 4 starts. I would love to be wrong about that.
I feel so bad. Every time I tune into a Padres game where he's the starting pitcher, I'm like, is this the one? And I feel so bad because when he succeeds, I'm excited for him and the Padres fans and all of that. It's just like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I kind of hope it doesn't, but I feel super guilty that I'm waiting at all.
Well, he outperformed his FIP pretty tremendously a couple years ago. He was, neck and neck last year. This year, he is drastically outperforming it. And we'll see if there's signal or if it's all just noise. That's going to be appointment television for me all season long.
If Randy Vasquez starts.
You've talked a little bit about WAR, FIP you just used there. What is the stat that is completely useless in your opinion?
It's hard for me to say anything is completely useless. Going back to the analogy of just use the tool what it's intended for. Something that's completely useless.
Runners in scoring position?
No.
I like that one.
This is a cop-out.
I was asking him.
I know, but I was defending it.
Because that's one that gets dumped on a lot.
I just think
wins, pitcher wins, obviously.
Maybe pitcher wins.
Although they matter to those pitchers.
Oh, Baseball Reference has started tracking not only pitcher wins, but team wins in games started by pitcher. It's kind of hidden, but I found it, and I'm so excited.
I used to talk about that a lot with Snell. Again, I know it sounds like I'm beating the drum.
Wait,
but is there one that pops out?
Was the wait for Snell? Was the record better or worse?
Worse.
Oh my God. Okay, that's good to know.
Well, why? Because you went to the bullpen a lot.
Right in the 5th inning. Yeah, there's a lot left. A lot of game left.
And the games took forever, so the defense will fall asleep.
It's going to be pitcher wins or saves.
Saves.
Oh, saves.
Pitcher
Wow.
wins or saves.
Wow, the city of Trevor Hoffman.
Yeah, but that's just the thing is it wasn't the saves that made him so great. It's just that he was the fire brigade. He just comes in and puts it out, He'd come in the 8th inning, end that inning and go out there for the 9th, and it was his dominance, that made him great. And he accumulated tons of saves. But he was a cheat code, and you got to decide when he goes into the game. That's how you win games. So I think saves, they kind of tend to happen. We have this unusual definition for them, but speaking kind of generally, often the save doesn't happen in the 9th inning. So for me, I guess if I have to choose, maybe I'm going with saves.
That's interesting, and I wonder if, not that they'll ever get rid of the stat of saves, they can't, but if people started ignoring it at some point, then you would see, I think, more teams using their closer, and I'm going to bring him in the 8th inning because that's when the heart of the lineup is coming up, at the top of the lineup is coming up, and the bottom of the lineup in the 9th, we're not afraid of type of thing.
Oh, it's such a good question because there's no doubt that saves get you paid. I mean, Josh Hader talked about that.
Yeah.
And we organize around what we measure. We optimize around what we measure. So it definitely influences those decisions. But I do wonder if unmoored from the constraints of saves, if we would think about using our best reliever, during a rally in the 7th inning, and whether that might get more wins over the long run.
I bet you'd have to pay that guy.
Yeah.
That guy would have to feel pretty good about that situation.
14-year contract or something. I do appreciate that Mike Schilt, I don't compliment Mike Schilt very often, but I do appreciate that he's not a believer in the, I'm not going to use my closer in the 9th inning of a home tied game, right? He brings in Suarez, and Suarez meets that moment more often than not. I appreciate that quite a bit. Because the people that are I'm only bringing my pitcher in for save situations.
But again, I think to Dylan's point from earlier, I don't know that you're going to get away with that. And everybody's like, well, he's the boss. He tells Josh Hader what to do. Well, now you're dealing with Josh Hader's agent.
Are you saying that Schilt might have issues bringing in his closer in a tie game?
What I will say is I think it was a lot harder to manage the 2023 Padres, respectfully,
than the 2025
than it was the 2024 and 2025 Padres.
That's fair.
I think you're probably right about that.
And that's not taking anything away from Schilt. I think he's done a really good job. I'm just telling you, I think it was a lot harder to manage that place where you have to talk to agents all the time, and you have to have alliances in there based on agency, and who's getting paid and who's not, and dudes looking around going, really? Drew Pomerantz, huh? You guys put your money into that.
I told you.
But not me.
I told you. It was trauma every time you bring up that man's name.
I do have one more, and out of curiosity, because everybody is an expert at filling out the lineup card. Is there, in your opinion, a way to optimize a lineup?
I think there probably is. There's certain spots in the lineup that tend over the course of the season to come up in pretty unproductive situations. Ironically, the 3rd spot, I think, is the spot in the order that typically will face a 2-out bases empty situation more than any other spot. And that makes you wonder if you want your best hitter in that spot. That certainly was the most prestigious spot in the order most of our lives. So I definitely think that there's some optimization. And I think about it in terms of game flow. What we saw in, to invoke the Dodgers here, what we saw in the bottom of their order last year is nothing but gritty at-bats, guys just trying to get on base, not trying to launch because they got Shohei Ohtani coming up in a couple of cycles in the order. And thinking about optimizing your lineup, it depends on the players on your team. But I really like that I've seen some similar approaches at the bottom of the order. I mean, yesterday is no exception. Bottom of the order, getting on base, just making contact, and turning it over to where you have these transcendent talents, and you're giving your best hitter the most at bats in the game. So it's something that it's hard to quantify what the optimal lineup is, but I think as a concept, it's very real, and it's something that should be considered and decisions made deliberately.
Hey, wait, can I? So I've come around on this. I used to think the same thing of you don't put a good hitter in the number 3 spot because they're constantly coming up 2 outs, no one on, right? I've come around on this, I think, because of Manny. And because Manny's at-bats seem very driven by context, right? I think if Manny comes up, 2 outs, no one's on, he's not trying to hit a home run or hit a double. He's like, how do I get a long at-bat that might end with me on base? Because I want to extend this inning as long as I can, get this starting pitcher out or this bullpen arm out as fast as I can, wear him out for the next inning, right? Like I can get an 8-9 pitch at bat and maybe I get on base and then another guy comes up and now instead of it being a 8-pitch inning, it's been an 18-pitch inning, and the difference between that over the long haul of a game is completely changed. That's why I flip-flopped. I used to be like, don't put a good hitter in 3, put a guy who has power and nothing else. And now I'm like, I don't know, if you have a guy who can work in a bat, that could be useful in that situation.
I think you definitely need a good hitter in the 3rd spot. If for no other reason, then you do need to create a long stretch that pitchers can't just pitch around your top of the order guys.
Well, for sure,
you cannot
yeah.
have dead spots in your lineup. So you need a good hitter in the 3 spot. I think growing up, you would automatically plug in your best hitter in the number 3 spot, and that's maybe what's changed.
Tony Gwynn.
Yeah.
Well, and even the way the pitchers look at that is different too, right? Because again, we're talking about quantifiable, non-quantifiable. Yeah, I can remember Jake Peavy going, I don't care, if it's AJ Preller batting 3rd. I'm going to treat that dude like he's the number 3 hitter in the lineup. So sometimes it's not just the scouting report; it's the situation too. Where it's like, oh, they're putting him there, right? So there is some mental stuff going on there.
Really?
Yep. I do remember that as well. Letters to AJ. It's available on Substack. What else you got? Social media. Where can people find all your great content? It's
Our
really,
social
really
media
smart
game
stuff.
is pretty weak, to be honest. But
You keep saying ours. Is there a team? Is it more than just you?
I give a lot of credit to the group chat. So every article's coming on the back of a lot of group chat arguments, a lot of discussions with my brother, who is a big intellect, and just any idea he doesn't agree with is going to tear apart, which is just a perfect writing partner for me, because I like knowing when I've gotten something wrong. So I am using that we pronoun just to try to share the credit.
Sure.
Yeah, but as far as that goes, the social media is pretty light presence. We have a Twitter X account, Letters to AJ, the number 2, and we're on Substack.
You're on Blue Sky too.
And that's right. And
That's
we're on
right.
Blue Sky.
That's where we started DMing.
Yeah, it's really smart stuff. And kudos to you again. Sorry I'm so late to the party, but better late than never. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Glad to have you. Glad to be here.
All right, should we wrap up here? I actually, before we get out of here, I want to point out that the beginning of our friendship many, many years ago, probably like 15 years ago, was you DMing me on social media and going, hey, I've been reading your stuff on Bolts and Blue. Smart stuff. So this is a full circle moment for me of you finding another blogger doing smart stuff and being like, hey, and yeah, it's great.
Well, I mean, I've always been of the opinion, even when you're doing, talk radio, right, and you're part of this legacy media, which is up in the tower looking down on all the commenters, that there's a lot of really smart people doing a lot of really smart things out there, and it should be celebrated. The whole knock on bloggers was, it's a bunch of nerds sitting in their mother's basements, but I'm guessing there's a lot of really talented writers and broadcasters who started writing and broadcasting as nerds in their parents' basement.
Yeah.
So what kind of hypocrite would I be if you didn't try to identify some of those? And again, I think I think Dylan's stuff is, I'm gonna have to go home and go to dictionary.com to re-listen to But I like that. I mean, I think I will always advocate for anybody, and people know this about me. I will always advocate for anybody who elevates the conversation, and that's what Letters to AJ does. So I was really, I'm super stoked that he took the time to come and reach out and join us and enjoy the rest of your time in San Diego, and we'll do it again on Friday.
Yep. Are you coming on Saturday for the Chicano Park celebration?
No, game day for me.
Oh,
SDFC
yeah.
at Charlotte. So
Are you calling the game?
I'm calling the game,
Look at
myself
you.
and Adrian Garcia Marquez. So we can talk about that in a little more depth, I suppose, on Friday.
Sure.
But yeah, I would love to. They're expecting, we were just talking to Stella here at Mason Ale Works, 50,000 people.
She said they're shipping lowriders from as far as Japan.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how expensive that would be?
Yes. I mean, when you think about shipping thoroughbred horses around the world for horse races, now think about putting lowriders somehow in some sort of transport to get it here. And the history of Chicano Park is one, if you don't know it, you should know it.
It's
because
really cool.
it's an important part of San Diego's history. A really, really important part of San Diego's history. And it's not just coming here because it's, good dining and all the like. It is an important part of the history of the city. So Chicano Park Day coming up on Saturday, and there will be all sorts of celebrations from Friday throughout the weekend as well. But yes, 4:30, I will be on the call on radio and the iHeart app. Charlotte FC, the turf. Got some good insights, which we'll share tomorrow. But that's going to be a good couple of days here in Barrio Logan.
All right, let's do it again tomorrow.